from tonight is Lynn Kane and Steve Retzloff. Disciplinary action, Department of Health advised that as a result of an investigation, Gregory Monsky from Shirley, New York State EMT 37165 had certification revoked effective 10/9/17 for violations of Part 800.16. Vincent Ialardi from Holtzville, New York State EMT 364843 had his certification revoked effective 11/7/17 for violations of Part 800.16. Richmond Medical Center, Staten Island, New York, has been assessed a civil penalty of $5,000 for violations of Part 800.12, Section B, 800.23, Section A, and 800.23, Section B. Under correspondence, Saratoga County EMT refresher course at Malta Stillwater EMS starts 12/27/17, and Western Turnpike EMT original starts 1/8/18. Any questions, comments? Okay. CON committee, Jim?
There was no action before the committee since our last meeting.
Okay. Report of the committee. Executive Director, Tim?
Hopefully everybody has a copy. I'll just speak on the high notes. For those that missed our annual awards banquet, you missed a great night. We had a great turnout. Just like I said, great venue, great food, great night. And I'd like to really thank Anne Marie Cross for helping me put this together. She was my point of contact with Saratoga Hospital. Much thanks to their generosity for hosting us at Longfellow's, and the staff at Longfellow's did a great job with the night there. All in all, fantastic night. EMD, for any of the agencies out here that have dispatchers, we have an EMD course starting in September. It does start on a Sunday there, December 10th. We still have seats. If anybody has some folks they want to get in, give us a call and we'll get them into that class. CIC update, this should be a pretty interesting one. If you guys know Dan Limmer, used to be a local medic here in Colony EMS, turned out to be a well-known educator. He'll be providing that CIC update on December 13th. That's going to be a 6-hour day, not a 3-hour day.
Is it here?
It is here. It is here. That's about it. Anybody has anything else that they want to ask about, I'd be happy to explain it. We made a number of events and meetings. One thing, Columbia Green Day, we had a Remo outreach table down there. Great turnout. We also fielded a table early last week at the Shaker High School Job Fair, and we had a great turnout there as well. So we're trying to get our name out there a little bit. That would conclude my report unless anybody has anything for me.
Thank you, Tim. Treasurer report, PJ?
Yep. Despite a $49,000 loss for the month of October, we're still in very good financial shape. We've got over $600,000 in cash and investment accounts, with total assets of $693,000. We have accounts payable tonight at $10,210.30. Part of that is CON deposits, which my understanding is from Tim, they have already been returned.
Thank you. Medical Director, Dr. Daly?
No meeting last month, will be a meeting this month. Meeting this month will include elections for REMAC Chair and Systems Medical Director. Other just important notes to realize we're having, unfortunately, on the same day as the CIC update, will be the spin down of the regional STEMI Mission Lifeline program. That's a full day over at the Hilton Garden in Troy. And we will be kicking off the regional stroke Mission Lifeline program that same day.
Do you have any report of the MAC committee or advisory? Or academic, I'm sorry. No? All right. EMS?
The EMS Council met last month and will meet again in January.
New York State EMS Council awards were given out. Brenda Wood from Rensselaerville, Brian's mom, was the New York State EMT of the Year and received her award at the Vital Signs Conference. The Vital Signs Conference was extremely well attended, good program. I think the highlight of the program was our saying thank you to Lee Burns. For those of you who don't know, Lee Burns, the Director of the Bureau of EMS, is retiring this year. December 27th is her last day. And so we got to wish Lee farewell, and the staff surprised her with a nice farewell at the Vital Signs Conference. I think that that topic is one on a lot of people's minds, and changes happening in EMS, and so many happening in EMS, and as well as what's happening in the Bureau of EMS. And so a number of members of the State EMS Council and the CMAC have gone to some meetings, met with the folks at the Department of Health, met with the folks in the Governor's office to talk about basically the future of the Bureau of EMS, the fiscal viability of the EMS field, the EMS workforce, and regulatory reform, among other topics. I've been part of that group. Wes Fremantle's been part of that group as the president of Onion, which is the Commercial Ambulance Providers Trade Group. And Dr. Daly has been part of that group as well. So our region has been extremely well represented in these discussions. And I think the tenor of the discussions has been that EMS has got a lot of challenges in front of it. And it's not just that the director of the Bureau of EMS is retiring and there'll be another director, but that the state has to invest its thinking in EMS, in the Bureau of EMS, in EMS. We're not fiscally sustainable, whether we're volunteer agencies or whether we're paid agencies. Our workforce is in peril, whether it's getting enough volunteers, being able to hire enough people, and that the state has to take some responsibility and ownership in trying to fix that. So it's not just in hiring a new Bureau of EMS director, but it's also in what other things should the state be doing. So I'm encouraged that those meetings even have occurred, that the folks have been able and willing to talk to us. I'm glad that our region's been pretty well represented in those, and they'll continue. And I suspect you'll hear more about that in the future. The only other thing coming out of the EMS Council that I think is significant is the work being done on the new basic life support protocols. Going back a few months, there was a recognition that the collaborative protocol in our region, which does contain, in our region and other regions, which does contain basically stop lines. You have the EMT level skill, the AEMT level skill, then the paramedic level skill. In some cases, the BLS protocol that is in the collaborative protocol was not identical to the BLS protocol, and the New York State printed 100 and something pages of BLS protocols. So a group of members of the SEMSCO and CMAC have taken on updating the New York State EMS protocol, the basic life support protocol. So you should be seeing in early 2018 a new New York State BLS protocol that is coordinated with and matches the collaborative protocol in our region, so that no one will ever be able to point it and say, well, one says do this and one says do that. I think you'll also see that the New York State EMS BLS protocol will look different than it does now. I think it's going to be more driven the way, is that correct, Mike? It'll look more like the collaborative protocol than the sheets that those of us who've been around for a while have been reading for 20, 30, 40 years. So that's coming our way. Hopefully early 2018, could take a little bit longer to get done, but that's a pretty big thing. And that's it from the State EMS Council.
Just to let you know where that project is right now, we're waiting for comments back from the Emergency Medical Services for Children group, as well as the State Trauma Advisory Committee, both of which have a few focused comments, but after that, basically for this region and the other regions north of Yonkers, it's not going to mean much change. What it is going to mean is that each protocol will not end, write your findings and your patient exam on a PCR, because that's your job. So it's going to be true patient care protocols, the people we vetted with, them with so far, like the appearance, they like the structure, they like the guiding towards care, a little bit less proscriptive. It will not be a major lift for anybody in this region. Next step will be for it to go to training for implementation. Use their expertise.
The nurse committee report, we met on November 7th. We discussed about the crisis patients again in the ER, how the volumes and the numbers had increased, and we're all seeing a higher number of children and adolescent psych patients, and how it requires more staff and resources to sit with the patients as one-to-one if patients are suicidal or homicidal, and how it's a challenge to manage these patients to keep them safe while waiting to be seen by a crisis evaluator. We shared some best practices and, how to manage the patients. We discussed the slide sheets of the HoverMed again. Albany Memorial was gonna trial the use of the Maxi slides or through an ambulance, and it was reported that they had trialed it on the slide sheets, but Bruin had not transported any patients with the slide sheets as of yet. Hover mats, some of the EDs are using the hover mats when patients are arriving in the ED. Most hospitals have safe patient handling committees, which is multidisciplinary and focuses on the patient from the time of arrival to discharge. We talked about using the hover mats and maybe doing that one-to-one exchange as we had talked about previously with EMS. And it was suggested that we start with the bariatric patients. And Deb Cox was actually at the meeting. And Deb, do you want to just report on what you had researched for that?
What I had offered to do was find all of the agencies that have bariatric stretchers and contacts for those and bring that back to the nursing committee. At Tim's request, I wrote a letter to the county coordinators, just basically telling them a little bit about the project, requesting that they provide the information to me on who has a bariatric stretcher and how contact person. And one of the things that I did want to be sure that this body knows is that I attend the meetings as a guest, so I don't speak on behalf of the committee, but if there are suggestions or concerns that you would like me to bring back to them, I've been attending the meetings, so I could certainly bring concerns or suggestions back with me.
Any discussion about that, or any thoughts? I know I had brought it up at the last meeting and talked about how we could try to operationalize that one-for-one exchange. We didn't know if maybe starting with the bariatric patients and after Deb had maybe done that poll as for bariatric, who has a bariatric stretcher, and start with that. The hover mats themselves are not that expensive, but the canisters are. So I know most of the EDs have the canisters, but it would be that exchange of the mats if we were to maybe be able to get that started. I don't know if you have any thoughts as far as from the financial side, if that would even be doable or feasible, but certainly I think one injury of somebody's back, whether it be a nurse or an EMS provider, is probably going to certainly outweigh what it would cost to maybe start with some of those hover mats. We have the slide sheets in at Saratoga, and they're a lot less expensive. I mean, they're probably like about $50, $60 if you get them in bulk, and you have 2 in each room. So we have those, and they are so much easier. They're easy to use as well. Hover mats are a lot more expensive, but there's certainly a lot of the. Some of the emergency departments are starting with those. Albany Med, one of the representatives brought it to their patient safety handling committee, and they're trying to see if they could get at least enough for the bariatric rooms, and then try to see if they could roll that out to all the other ones too. But that's just in at Albany Med, but how we could work out the one-to-one exchange. I don't know if you have thoughts. We certainly think it's a good idea from the nurses committee, but anybody have any thoughts about that from the EMS side? If you think it's a good idea or not, or maybe would it be affordable?
It's a quiet group.
Yeah.
But But I gotta tell you, Emery, as we talked about at the nurses committee meeting, and as certainly Scott spoke to here at the REMAC, this is something about the safety of our providers. I'm a little disappointed that I'm not hearing more people speaking up about whether or not this is something that's worthwhile. Because I certainly think that something that can provide more safe transit of patients from one location to another. Every time I watch people jerking their backs trying to move a patient by a sheet lift from an ambulance stretcher onto a hospital stretcher, just looking at people that are gonna get hurt. If we can make that process easier and extend some careers, keep people more comfortable when they're not at work, I think it's a good idea. That sounds to me like a reasonable investment.
I think it's a no-brainer for those of us that utilize that equipment. I question what the role of the REMSCO is in that, I guess is why I was silent, because I'm not sure that, I'm not sure if the REMSCO has a role in all of that, and if it is, what it is. I mean, I'm fine with it if there is, I just don't know what
I
it
think
is.
the
That's why I
REMSCO's
was quiet.
role is an opportunity for best practices to be shared between an agency that's using it right now for some of their patients, and an agency that's not using it for any of their patients, in order to make sure that we can get more career longevity out of our providers, because we share those providers across the region. That's a leadership function of this organization. The other thing that this organization can do, and is frankly, because of fiscal stewardship, is in a place to do, would be to provide the seed money to get this going if we were to do a regional implementation of a program like this. You got your seed money out of CMH because they had the forethought to say, let's do this for places within Columbia County. That's good, but most of the other folks don't have that at their disposal right now, and being able to move this out and have it implemented region-wide may be something that would be of great benefit to everybody. And that's a primary function of the regional council, and that's why it should really be here. I think prompting it from the nurses committee, because the hospital side of this is also profoundly important. So it's all of those functions working together to improve the work environment and patient care handling for all of our patients.
And I brought it here more as a communication. I thought it would be a good venue to communicate it, because we have good representation here, to see if that would be something that people would be interested in moving forward, and how we could do that. Are there any thoughts about that?
Do you know, Dr. Daly, I mean, is what Scott has done, is that widely known around the region, as an example?
By the people who were at the REMAC, because he dragged me around on the floor on a hover mat.
But I mean, like, by-
chose to make the mistake of watching the video.
I mean, is it available to, like, is there a broad range of EMS transportation agencies that are aware that technology is available and in use in an EMS application?
I would imagine so. It's just I mean, it's, you know, the hover mat is, you know, being used at most nursing homes, at most hospitals, so anybody who's transporting bariatric patients should be familiar with it. I can't imagine anybody that has a bariatric unit that's transporting these patients that's not familiar with the hover mat.
Yeah.
Well, Scott asked a really good question. Is this the place, he asked, is this the place for it? And Mike gave a really good answer. But the only way something comes of it here is if, of the people around the table, some want to get involved in moving something forward, right? The region is a great place to discuss something like this if we should be doing it. And the region has the financial wherewithal, as Dr. Daly said, to be a seed money to doing something. And it's a place where we all convene to talk about it. So I think what we have to figure out is this something that enough of the agencies represented on the council think is worthy of us doing, and then putting a group of people together to lead it? I mean, we could ask Scott to come and demonstrate like he did for the REMAC at the REMSCO, the hover mat. But at the end of the day, there's a good, you know, two dozen agencies here. We have to, you know, show of hands, how many of you are interested in looking at a regional solution versus however you just wanna do it yourself, and whether or not there is an opportunity to do something regionally and demonstrate it. We could have a committee, but a committee needs people to be on it that believe in the purpose of that and moving it forward.
And I would take it even one step further, and I would say, not to throw Dean under the bus, because he's the guy who sets up the camera for this meeting, but I would say, make a presentation. You know, let Scott do the same demonstration, only put it available to anybody in the region. You know, and you can, you know, we can interview you. We'll do our Remo News. You can be the feature story. And it certainly makes it easier than trying to get people to come to a presentation. You know, if you could sit down and watch something for 15 minutes and get the gist of what's out there, it's certainly easier.
We could direct them
than
to that specific REMAC meeting. Scott gave a great presentation right out there, so it should all be on tape.
Yeah.
I guess my original question was kind of pointed at whether or not things of this nature usually come from this body, or whether they usually come from academic and MAC meetings and those bodies. And I don't really care. I mean, I'm obviously interested in the topic. We have a vested interest in it. We have a lot of money invested in bariatric equipment. We could have used a second ambulance the other day. We had 2 calls simultaneously, and we had to triage one of them to hang on for a little while. But, you know, I just don't know that the same level of interest is gonna be available at this body that might be available, or that might be present at the academic and MAC meetings. Just because it's a different makeup of people, that's all.
Well, you raise a question about how much agencies want to invest. I'm an agency that has no real bariatric capacity. If we get bariatric calls, we're still sort of trying to figure out, you know, what we're gonna do. And we haven't had a lot of them, but we're not set up for it. We're not in a position to invest like you have at your agency. So to me, I would love to see a regional conversation about, I imagine there are a lot of agencies there are more agencies like mine that haven't invested in bariatrics than yours that has, probably. I don't know that there are a lot of bariatric ambulances. Is it a place at the region for us to have the conversation about a regional solution so that everybody, and you know, this is the kind of place where either people look down at their shoes and they're like, you know, not something I want to do or something I want to jump in on.
I think it would be smart to do it regionally so that we're all using the same equipment, as opposed to having 4 different versions of whatever out there like we do with everything else.
Especially if the hospitals are already
Right.
using the same.
If the hospitals could be on board, why not have all the agencies be on board? We all know how to use the equipment because we have a bariatric, we're working together to get them from point A to point B. Because one crew can't handle it usually. So,
It seems that part of this probably revolves around what the answer is to Deb's question that she asked of the county coordinators, and whether or not she got an answer.
It hasn't gone out. Tim
Okay.
asked me to bring it here initially.
So then what that answer would be then
I think
do we even know who's out there? And the reality might be that those are the agencies that you need to have the conversation with, rather than, I mean, maybe this body, you know, might be great to have the support of this body, you know, for the reasons that Dr. Daly mentioned, but at the end of the day, if there's 8 or 9 or 10 agencies around the region that are actually doing the work, they're the ones that you need to get at the table.
Yeah, it would make sense that the agencies doing the bariatric work would have the most experience and knowledge in using the various equipment. They could offer an educated opinion on it, as opposed to agencies that have never touched the stuff.
And you'd want to have their buy-in if we were gonna try to do something regional.
That would make sense where to start.
Also, in that is also the hospital buy-in too, along with the agency. There's several hospital systems right now that are not using hover mats or those kinds of devices. Say all hospital ERs are using them, they're not. Even hospitals in the system, some hospitals in that system are using them, some are not. We see that on a daily
Nursing
basis.
homes.
So we get hospitals together and actually buy with the nurses committee, along with agencies who do have bariatric capacity. Maybe we're actually looking at it, those folks and maybe in a room together.
I mean, I can bring this back to the nurse committee meeting, at our next meeting and, see if we wanna set up a meeting, reach out to the agencies. I mean, Deb, you have the contact information for everybody that you're gonna reach out to, right? Maybe we could invite those folks to. I'm not sure how everybody wants to proceed with that. I brought this here to get everybody's input, and if it's not something, I mean, if it's something we wanna move forward with, I'll be happy to, to do that through the nurse committee, but I don't know what the best venue is for that, if
But it sounds like you guys have already begun tackling the issue. Deb's got a task in front of her. I would say let her carry that out, see what she finds out, and then bring it back to the nurses committee, and maybe bring back those players to meet with the nurses committee and do some work there and see what it brings.
Is that something where you could have some key players in the region kind of help the nurses committee with that versus having a committee to help a committee to help a committee type of thing, and maybe some guests on it, specialists or professionals, so to speak, that could help you in coming up with something?
well, that would be helpful for us, because I'm not even sure, who else all to reach out to, and that's why, when we looked to Deb, because she had all the contact information,
Well, it
to us,
sounds
we
like-
just wanted to
It
reach out.
sounds like there's a pilot program running right now in Columbia County with Columbia Memorial Hospital and Relation. That seems to work. And maybe just have that as a seed project, maybe actually can expand that throughout.
It's in its infancy, but
Right, but again, it's a pilot program, and if it works for Columbia County, it might work for the rest of the counties. But there's buy-in.
We could certainly have, maybe someone from that group attend a meeting,
it would give me a reason to drag along somebody from CMH to come to the nurses committee if they're not already attending, which I assume they're not.
if they're what?
I assume they're not attending.
No,
CMH?
they're not, no,
It
they're
would give me a
invited.
reason to drag somebody along.
Yeah, that would be great, that's what they get invited every time we meet. But, Deb, if you do that initially and then maybe send it out to, give me the results before the next meetings, we meet every other month, our next meeting will be in January, so, okay. We talked again about, the violent patients in the ED, we talked about strategies of how to, deal with that and the assaults on the ER staff. Albany Med reported they had police presence, at triage from 8P to 8A, along with security. Some of us just have security in the ED, but not the police presence, so we just, I think it's just, we discussed the high number of incidents that we had. We talked about capacity and kind of related to the EMS providers in some of the hospitals with, the delays and again, what need to bring back here, certainly the high capacity of holding admissions in all of the ERs, which attributes to some of the delays in doing the handoff from EMS to the nurses or to the staff in the departments. So just again, us understanding that, most of us don't want to create any delays of people having to wait, to hand off a patient, but there's a lot of times that we're stuck. Right now, we predicted at Saratoga tomorrow morning that we're predicting about 20 holds, and we've got 30 rooms in the ER, so we're gonna be holding 20 admissions, that's 2/3 of the ED. So, and that's really high for us. We are looking to open up that new unit on the second floor of the hospital, which used to be our nursing home. We're looking at doing that hopefully in January. They are gonna do some renovations on one of the other floors, so we'll be moving the tele unit there for a little bit, but hopefully that will decompress us a bit. It's gonna be 20 private rooms. Ellis reported at our nurse committee that they are opening up an OBS unit. They said it was gonna be an 8-bed observation unit, kind of adjacent to the ED, they said, and it was going to be, for, again, to try to offset some of the ER patients themselves. They said that would be scheduled to open on January 8th. So, our next meeting is scheduled for January 16th. Any questions? county report, I'm sorry, Lynn is not here, and she actually represents, several committees. We did talk about the bylaws committee, we had met a couple of times, the last meeting, we had the, Remo, attorney who met, with us, and Lynn had compiled, some of the reports from them and from our last committee, so we're gonna reach out, I'm gonna call Lynn, next week, because, she, isn't here tonight, and, see if we can schedule a meeting within the first 2 weeks in December, and get that going, and we'll definitely meet, either way, and, we'll set that up before the holidays, and then we will report out at our next meeting. Let's see, county reports, Brian Wood, Albany,
Nothing to report,
what's that?
nothing.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I apologize. QI committee is Dean, I apologize, because I skipped around.
We have a meeting
I
next week,
apologize.
the 6th, December 6th we meet.
Okay, and the MCI committee.
No official report this time, however, I would encourage the counties and all the individual agencies to continue to review that plan. And if there's any changes or updates, you need to notify either myself or Tim, so we can make those changes, and rather than waiting 2 years to do it.
Thank you, PJ. County reports, Brian?
Nothing to report.
Columbia, PJ?
No report.
Green County, AB?
Good evening, everyone. Just to follow up with the last 3 years of conversation, the Greene County Countywide Ambulance Task Force has finished up its phase 3 quote-unquote project. It's still out there in the midst of the world of EMS in Greene County. However, I anticipate that with the new year coming, we'll meet again and we'll kind of reconvene and go from there. I anticipate, without meeting with everyone, that the task force will go away and what will happen organically. But at this stage, what I'd like to do is offer everybody and anybody in the Remo region or throughout the state of New York that we have now finished the evolution of recognizing the problem, seeing the problem, trying to fix the problem, and succeeding in some regards and failing in others. So if anyone else is looking to do such a thing, please feel free to utilize any of our data. We will tell you certainly where we succeeded and where our pitfalls were and where we would do it all again if we had the opportunity. So please feel free to pick one of our brains who are on the task force and contact me if you have any questions, comments, concerns. Good news though is the Greene County paramedics are funded again for 2018. As we all know, 2 years ago was a big topic in front of us in the REMAC in regards to cats who go into the paramedic level. Without that $200,000, the viability of our countywide system would have certainly been harmed. So for 2018, it was a continuing resolution for 2 years. It is now part of our annual budget, which doesn't mean it's safe for 2019, but it certainly was a big hurdle that we're very proud to have. Last but not least, I'm hoping that next week in front of our county legislature, we'll be supporting the state, what would you call it? Central services and Medicaid, Medicare increases, which will be hopefully something that other counties could start to do to push up to our state legislators and our governor's office. So I will report back in January. Hopefully that was successful. But if not, Steve, do you have anything?
Yeah, just one other thing. On November 18th, we hosted, Greene County Public Health hosted a ChemPack drill. I assume everybody in the room knows that Columbia Memorial is a ChemPack site. So we had a new, we had a drill, all-day drill. Dr. Daly donated some doctors from Albany Med to do some lectures. Gary Tuthill moderated a tabletop in the afternoon. We had about 45 people regionally signed up for it. I think about 37 or 38 showed up. But part of the tabletop included an actual phone call to the ED to have assets brought over as though it were an actual release. And it was educational in that the doc in the ER had no idea how to go about calling for them. So although the Columbia County Sheriff, who brought them over, didn't come lights and sirens, which would have saved a couple of minutes. It took an hour and 13 minutes to get the assets from the time of call to arrival. So we will be bringing that back and working on ways to streamline that process.
Steve, would you address the kits that were handed out to the providers in Green County to deal with animals secured from fires, et cetera?
Oh yeah, Invisible Fence has a program where they donate to anybody who wants them. They're free of charge through Project Breathe of upstate New York. It's 3 sizes of masks for pets. I know Delmar Bethlehem has them. We got them for every ambulance and fly car